Trap 1. The identity trap. This might be the most dangerous trap of all, because you can see the other traps. You can see your spending, you can see your debt, you can see your credit card statements, you can see your bank account, but this one is different. Or more accurately, it's much harder to notice, because this trap isn't in your wallet, it's in your head, and most people don't even realize it's there. You're 25 years old. Maybe you're thinking about making your first investment. Maybe you're trying to save money. Maybe you're trying to get your life a little more organized. Then a small voice starts talking inside your head. I'm not the kind of person who understands investing. I'm not good with money. I'm not a disciplined person. This is just who I am. If I know myself, I'll probably fail anyway. At first, these thoughts seem harmless, but over time they become dangerous, because people rarely shape their behavior around their goals. They shape it around their identity. The way you see yourself eventually becomes the way you live. Think about someone who constantly describes themselves as messy. After a while, being messy stops being a behavior. It becomes part of their identity. And nobody likes fighting their own identity. The same thing happens with money. Many people spend years telling themselves the same story without realizing it. I'll never be rich. People in my family don't do things like that. I'm unlucky when it comes to money. I'm always behind everyone else. Then small opportunities appear in their lives, but they don't take them, because deep down, they don't see themselves as the kind of person who deserves those opportunities. That's why some people still struggle even after they start making more money, because their income changed, but their identity didn't. One day, your salary increases. One day, your savings account starts growing. One day, a real opportunity comes your way. But if you still believe the old story in your head, your behavior will eventually pull you back to where you started. People often connect financial success with knowledge, but in reality, most people already know what they should do. They know they should spend less. They know they should be more intentional with their money. They know they should think about the future. The problem isn't a lack of information. The problem is what they believe about themselves, because the human mind works in a strange way. It struggles to hold on to things it doesn't believe it deserves. It moves away from things it doesn't feel worthy of. It retreats from lives it doesn't feel connected to. And most of the time it does all of this without realizing it. Maybe that's why some people keep repeating the same cycle. One step forward, two steps back, an opportunity, a mistake, a fresh start, then giving up. And years later, they look back and wonder why they never moved forward. But the answer usually isn't in their bank account. The answer is in the way they think. In reality, every trap in this video is connected by the same idea: lifestyle inflation, procrastination, comparison, emotional spending. They all look different, but they all lead to the same place: living your life on autopilot. And maybe the path to financial freedom doesn't start with learning a new investment strategy. Maybe it starts with learning a new way to think. Maybe it starts with telling yourself a different story. Because at the end of the day, people don't build their lives overnight. They build them through small decisions repeated every single day. And the person making those decisions isn't your bank account, isn't your boss, isn't the economy. It's you. And maybe that's the most important lesson in this entire video. Don't try to look richer. Don't try to look more successful. Don't try to win a race against everyone else. Instead, ask yourself one simple question: who do I actually want to become? Because the money you have in the future. Trap 2. The I'll start later trap. Nobody intentionally ruins their future. At least, most people don't. The problem usually isn't making bad decisions. The problem is constantly delaying the right ones. In a way, it becomes a habit. You're 25 years old. You know that one day you should start investing. You know that one day you should start saving money. You know that one day you want to become financially free. Deep down, these thoughts are always somewhere in the back of your mind. You know what you should be doing, just not today. Because this month has been a little busy. Because a few unexpected expenses came up. Because you'd rather wait until your salary gets a little higher. Because you need to get a few things sorted out first. And honestly, most of those reasons sound completely reasonable. The problem is this: you were thinking the same things last year, maybe even 2 years ago. The human mind is incredibly good at protecting today, but it's not nearly as good at protecting the future. That's why putting something off until tomorrow feels comfortable. Because tomorrow seems like it comes with no cost. Not investing today doesn't hurt. Not saving money today doesn't hurt either. Making an unnecessary purchase today doesn't hurt. They all seem small, because the consequences don't show up immediately. That's why people become comfortable carrying credit card debt. That's why people keep delaying their savings goals. That's why people keep saying, later. Because the human brain values today's comfort more than tomorrow's reward. And here's the strange part. Nobody is intentionally sabotaging their future life. They're simply trying to make today's life a little easier. And they repeat it, again, and again, and again. A year goes by, then 2 years, then 5. One day you're scrolling through old photos, and you realize something. You still have the same dreams, but you haven't gotten any closer to them. That feeling is heavier than most people expect, because failing is one thing. Never starting is something else entirely. Think about a friend of yours. Maybe they started investing. Maybe they started a small business. Maybe they built up savings. Maybe they simply stayed consistent. One day you look at where they are and assume they're smarter than you, luckier than you, more disciplined than you. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time, the difference is much simpler. They started. You didn't. They took the risk. You kept postponing it. At some point, courage becomes part of the equation too. People think they missed a great opportunity, but most of the time, what they actually missed wasn't the opportunity. It was time. Because time is quiet. Every day looks the same. Every week looks the same. But years later, its impact becomes enormous. That's why some people reach 35 and feel like they're falling behind. Not because they've spent their entire lives making bad decisions, but because they kept pushing the right decisions into the future. And tomorrow arrives much faster than people think. But even this isn't the most expensive trap. Because in the next trap, people aren't losing money by spending it. They're losing by constantly comparing themselves to everyone else. Trap 3. The comparison trap. One day, you pick up your phone. You're only planning to spend a few minutes on it. A little Instagram, a little TikTok, maybe a few YouTube shorts. But then something strange happens. Without buying anything, you start feeling poorer. Because someone just posted their new car. Someone else is showing off their new house in Los Angeles. Another person is on vacation in Bali. Someone else is sitting inside a Ferrari in Dubai. And another person is explaining how they retired at 27. Meanwhile, you're staring at an empty coffee cup sitting on your kitchen counter. And suddenly, your own life starts to feel inadequate. You fall into a mindset of scarcity and inadequacy. The human mind evolved over thousands of years to live in small communities. Back then, we compared ourselves to a few dozen people at most. Today, we're comparing ourselves to millions, and not just to their lives, to the best moments of their lives. That's where the problem begins. Because social media doesn't show people's lives, it shows the trailer. Nobody posts their bad days. Nobody shares the morning they were late for work on a Tuesday. Nobody posts their credit card statement. Nobody shows the last $47 left in their bank account at the end of the month. But everyone shares their highlight reel. And most of the time, our brains struggle to recognize the difference. After a while, normal things stop feeling normal. Your apartment starts to feel too small. Your phone starts to feel outdated. Your salary starts to feel insufficient. Your life starts to feel like it's falling behind. And maybe that's the most dangerous part. Because there may not be a real problem at all, but you feel like there is. And people usually act based on how they feel, not based on reality. Think about a friend of yours. You make roughly the same amount of money. You live similar lives. Then one day, they buy a new car. Maybe it's financed. Maybe it's paid for with debt. Maybe it's something they genuinely can't afford. But you don't know any of that. All you see is the car, and suddenly your own car feels old. Nothing actually changed, but your perception did. And that's where many financial mistakes begin. People stop buying things they need, and start buying things other people have. The problem is that this race has no finish line. There will always be someone living in a nicer house. There will always be someone driving a more expensive car. There will always be someone making more money. The way to win this game isn't to get ahead, it's to stop playing it. But that realization takes time, especially in your 20s. Because at that age, it feels like everyone is racing towards something. Career, money, relationships, success. And it constantly feels like there's an invisible stopwatch running in the background. Some people buy a house at 25. Some start companies. Some begin investing. Some travel the world. And sometimes, you're not even sure which direction you're supposed to go. And honestly, that's completely normal. But social media doesn't make it feel normal. It makes you feel late. The truth is, most people only see the outcome. They never see the process. They don't see the years of work. They see the celebration photo. They don't see the years of failure. They see the success story. They don't see the debt. They see the car. They don't see the stress. They see the vacation. And then they compare their behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's highlight reel. That's not a fair comparison. Yet millions of people do it every single day. Maybe that's why some people don't become happier even when they make more money. Because the problem isn't a lack of money. It's constantly using other people's lives as the measuring stick. And when you're always looking at someone else's scoreboard, you eventually forget to play your own game. But the next trap is even quieter, because this time, the thing holding you back isn't other people, it's your own mind. Trap 4. The reward trap. You've had a long day, you woke up early. You went to work, you sat through meetings, you answered messages, you checked emails, you dealt with your own personal problems. You sat in traffic, and finally you make it home. You're exhausted, maybe you're stressed, or maybe you just want the day to be over. Then you pick up your phone, you order some food, and you tell yourself, I deserve this. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem isn't doing it once. Everyone deserves to treat themselves once in a while. The problem is when it slowly turns into a habit, because the human brain loves rewards. In many ways, we live through reward psychology, especially after difficult days. Buying something feels good. A new pair of shoes, a new game, a new set of headphones, a new subscription, sometimes even an expensive coffee. In that moment, it genuinely feels good, and your brain remembers it. Stress, purchase, relief. After a while, it becomes a cycle. You have a bad day, you buy something, you're feeling bored, you buy something, you want to reward yourself, you buy something. And little by little, spending money stops being a practical decision and becomes an emotional reaction. Maybe over time you start wanting better things too, more expensive things, more luxurious things. And that's the point most people never notice. Some purchases aren't driven by logic, they're driven by emotions. That's why people often buy things they don't actually need. Not because they want the product, because they want the feeling. Think about it. Have you ever bought something you really wanted? Something you couldn't stop thinking about? And then, just a few weeks later, you got used to it. You probably have. Because most buying decisions don't stay exciting for very long. The excitement fades, the product stays, but so does the credit card bill. And sometimes the debt stays too. People often try to buy happiness. The problem is that happiness doesn't arrive in a package. After a while, the new thing becomes normal. Then you want something else, then something else, then something else, and one day, you look around your home and realize something. You own dozens of things you barely use. Some of them are probably still sitting in their original boxes. Things that once felt absolutely necessary, things you barely think about today. The interesting part is this. This trap isn't only about money, it's about identity. Because sometimes people buy things to feel more successful, more powerful, more important, more happy. But most of those feelings are temporary. A new phone might excite you for a few days. A new car might excite you for a few months. But the way you feel about yourself, that takes much longer to change. And shopping usually doesn't solve that problem. It simply quiets it for a little while. Maybe that's why some people don't save more money when their income increases. They just spend more. Because now they can afford bigger rewards. But here's the paradox. Constantly rewarding yourself can sometimes mean punishing your future freedom. And that might sound harsh, but for many people, that's exactly what's happening. Small rewards, large consequences, and none of them seem dangerous on their own, because every purchase feels reasonable, every purchase feels earned, every purchase feels like it's just this one time. But years later, the things that create the biggest outcomes usually aren't the big decisions, they're the small behaviors repeated over and over again. And the final trap may be quieter than all of them. Because the thing holding you back isn't social media, it isn't spending, and it isn't a low salary. In the final trap, the person standing in your way is you.